Hello, everyone. How are you all? I hope all of you are fine and safe. So, welcome back to school. Welcome to English class reading lesson for grade 8. Lesson objectives for today are: number 1, define narrative. Number 2, define theme. Number 3, define plot. Number 4, list the plot structure or the structure of the plot. Okay? Let's start now with the warm-up activity. As you see, we have a short passage here. I want you all to read it silently very well. And then think of an answer for the following question. Which kind of text is this? So what are you supposed to do is to read the text very well and think which kind of text is this? To which genre does this text belong? Okay? So, what is narrative? We have here a simple definition for narrative. Narrative writing that tells a story by presenting events in an orderly, logical sequence. Narratives always have a purpose. The writer has a reason he or she wants to tell his story. So, narrative simply means a story. When you read a story that starts with, for example, once upon a time there was a girl, there was a boy, and there was an animal, and then happened something, and after that something else happened, and they went to the forest, and at the end this happened. So these events with that logical order, with that logical sequence, are called narrative. Why it's narrative? Because someone is already narrating, is telling you a story. Okay? Another example, when I say, when I was 6 years old, I used to go and play with my friends, and then one of my friends, one day he traveled, and I was so sad for that, and I still remember him. So I'm narrating now. I'm telling you events with logical order. Okay? So this is narrative. So any story, any novel, any short story belong to the genre of narrative or the type of writing which is called narrative. So basically, narrative is any story or any writing or any text that narrates or tells a story with a logical sequence. Okay? You should know also that narrative has a purpose. Some writers or some authors just write for entertainment. Some writers write those stories or narratives to just deliver a moral message or a moral lesson through their lines of stories, okay? Or they just wanted to share their experience, life experience. So there are many purposes for writing narratives, but the main one, or the one that we know, that everyone know, that stories have been written for entertainment, okay? Okay, so we have a clear idea now about the first element, which is narrative. Now let's move to the second element, and here is a question. Do you know what does theme mean? So, definition of theme. Theme is defined as a main idea or underlying meaning of a literary work, which may be stated directly or indirectly. So, theme is the main idea of a narrative or a story. Okay? So, it's the main concept that the story is discussing, like a story can have the theme of love, or the theme of friendship, for example, is discussing a friendship, or morals, or relationships, or crime. So this theme, or this central idea, or this main idea, okay, that is discussed in a narrative, can be written directly so the reader can understand this story has that theme, or it could be indirect by just reading between the lines, having it indirectly. So this is the theme. It's a main idea, the main concept of a story or narrative, and it could be presented directly or indirectly. It's up to the writer or the author. Here I have an example of a theme for you. So, this is a story, Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. Another example, Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. So, these two novels have the same theme, which is crime and mystery. Now let's move to the plot, which is an essential element or part of the narrative. Plot is a literary term used to describe the events that make up a story. So, the main part of a story is called a plot. Those events with logical order that we have discussed at the beginning of the lesson when we just define narrative, these events are called plot. Okay? Yeah. These events related to each other, of course, because they are in a logical sequence. And also the structure of a novel depends on the organization of events in the plot of the story. So, plot means simply the events that make up a story or a narrative. That's it. Now, I want you to think if the plot or those events in a narrative are happening in a straight timeline, or there are a lot of ups and downs in a story. What do you think? Do you think the plot timeline is a straight line, or just we have a lot of ups and downs? Think about it. You should know that before you read a story or a narrative, before you write a narrative, you should know that you should follow a specific structure. So we have a plot structure. As you see here on the screen, we have a roller coaster. We have a lot of ups and downs, and we have different stages of events inside a story or a narrative. Okay? So now let me ask you if you have any prior knowledge or an idea about the terms or the concepts we have here on this roller coaster. For example, as you see here on the left side of the picture, we have exposition. What does exposition mean? Do you have any idea? The more we go here, also we have rising action. Do you know what can be a rising action? If you go up, also we have a climax. Think about it. What does climax mean? As you see, as we go down, we have falling actions. So, what do you think? Do you have any idea? Now, let's go to each stage of the plot structure. Take it one by one, slowly, to be able to understand it. So, any story should has a plot, and the plot, as we have said, the events with the logical order, the sequence of events, okay? So we should start with exposition, which is the first stage of a plot in a narrative, okay? Exposition means the start point or the beginning of a story. Which kind of information should we have in exposition of a narrative? The author or the writer should give us a background, okay, a background information about the story, the general atmosphere of the story. The author also should introduce the characters, people in the story to us. Another thing should be included in the exposition, which is the beginning of the story, is the setting. What does setting mean? Setting means the time and place, circumstances, or conditions. So again, the first stage of a plot diagram or plot structure in any narrative, in any short story, in any novel in English, should start with exposition, which is the start point or the story beginning, in which we get know the characters, the background information, and the setting, which means the time and place circumstances. Okay, after we have the exposition and we have a general idea and we now know the characters, okay, so the more actions happen, all the actions that happen after the exposition, after the beginning of the story, are called rising action. They are rising, they are happening. They are happening in a logical order. So we call those actions that happen after the exposition rising actions. Okay? During the plot or events or actions in a narrative, something which is called a conflict or struggle will happen between the characters. We will discuss this in details later. Okay? So those rising actions will still keep rising, happening till they reach a peak. or atop of a mountain, the highest point of the conflict in a story or narrative, which is called the climax. Climax is a very important element in a plot, okay, which is the highest point of conflict between characters, okay? Then after the climax, everything is going to be solved to be prepared, to prepare the readers for the end of the story. So those actions that are happening after the climax are called falling actions. Falling actions. Everything is being solved in one way or another by the author. Then the end of the story and the solutions of the problems is called here resolution. Resolution is the end of the story. Okay, so these are the main steps of or stages of plot diagram in a narrative. Exposition in the beginning, and we have the rising action, then we have the climax and the top of the actions, and after the climax we have falling action, and then the end of the story, which is resolution. You should keep this in mind because we will be using these 5 stages and apply them on any piece of literature, on any narrative. We can find exposition, conflict, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. So we should know them, understand them very well to be able to apply them and then extract them from any piece of narrative later. Okay? Now we should wrap up our lesson. Let's revise. I have a question here for you. What is narrative? Question number 2, give an example for a narrative you have read recently. So, in today's lesson, we have discussed the following concepts: narrative, theme, plot, and plot structure. I hope the lesson was clear and easy for you. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.